All right, y'all. Thank you for coming here. We're going to review some of the books for 2025. I didn't review any for 2024. So these are just a few of the books. I was able to read 44 books for 2024. And some of them were library, some of them were on my Kindle,
2025.
and some of them were, what is that called? Audible. So these are some of the ones I have in my library that are just physically here. We're going to review them real quick. All right, Josadi, these are some of the physical books that I read in 2024.
Let's roll in the books.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so the first book we have, by the way, we have 11 books to review, just so you know. So the first book we have is How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler.
Thank you, Mortimer Adler, How to Read a Book, classic. I'm going to try to be real quick on this. So this is a great book by Mortimer Adler. I had this for a while, didn't actually read it all the way through until last year. Most people, I think, read maybe a third of this book and then don't read it anymore as soon as you read the 4 different types of readings, which are elementary, inspectional, analytical, and subtopical. Basically, what that means is elementary, understanding the sentence structure, paragraph, and then inspectional is inspecting the book, seeing the outline, seeing what the topic is about. Then analytical reading, you're breaking it apart. You're looking at each phrase. You're arguing with the author. Adler says you don't bring greater honor to him, to the author, that is, than disagreeing with them. And because when you disagree with them, it is assumed that you're understanding his argument. And then fourth, syntopical, which means you go through different books and approach one subject, even if that book's original intention was not that one subject. You're threading, in a sense, through different books, even if it's just reading 1 or 2 chapters from that specific book to address a certain topic. Great book. I think everyone should read this. I don't think this book is outdated. Everyone should read this. I bought my daughter a copy. Hopefully she'll read it soon. Bought my son a copy, his own copy. Hopefully he'll read it soon. I know a new book was published with the same exact title, How to Read a Book, that new author says the reason he did it because he wanted to give a more modernized take. I appreciate it. He brings some stuff in. I read that book as well. He mentioned some stuff about audiobooks and a little higher understanding of fiction. He feels that Adler didn't do a good job with fiction. I still think Adler did a great job. I'm going to say this. If you have to read one of those 2 books, read this one. Don't think because you read the new one that you shouldn't read this one. No. If you had to read one, this one is it. This one is just far superior, in my opinion. But if you read this one, go ahead and read the other one as well. The other author is pretty good as well. Mortimer Adler's How to Read a Book. Next
is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar...
Gray.
What?
Dorian Gray.
Oh, Dorian Gray.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I forgot that. By Oscar Wilde.
Yep. Oscar Wilde wrote this book. This is a Gothic book. Tends to be a little more gloomy, a little more dark. So, for example, this one, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, if you look at it closely right here, see it's a little gloomy. Sometimes people think of castles. It can be, doesn't have to be. Anyway, this book is really good. Oscar Wilde went through some stuff. Let me read here at the back. It says, The Picture of Dorian Gray was a success. The scandal. Early readers were shocked by its hints of unspeakable sins, and the book was later used as evidence against Wilde at his trial at the Old Bailey in 1895. I heard about this trial. I decided not to find out what all of that was about until after I read this book because I wanted to judge this book on its own merit. And what I will say is that this book is fantastic. Somebody recommended this to me. It did not disappoint, basically, without giving spoilers here. This person is, by all accounts, from everyone, he's very attractive. He has a youthful look to him. Everyone's going to say, eventually you're going to lose that youth, and he hopes that he doesn't. And essentially his aging gets passed down to a picture. But it's not limited to just aging with regards to time. As he grows older and as decades go by, people say, oh, Dorian is doing this, Dorian's doing that. His friends say, I know Dorian. He doesn't have that resemblance. Like, his face doesn't look like somebody who's gone through hardship and all these behaviors, or not even hardship, but, just this behavioral, sinful lifestyle. as if anyone sees an addict, you'll see that their faces are just different. They tend to age a little quicker, or their face start looking a little different. But this was not happen to Dorian. And very good book. The author wrote very well. Love the language. Dorian has good friends. Dorian has bad friends. But overall, Dorian was just not a good person. But you can see his corruption in the book. Picture Dorian Gray. This is what happens when somebody thinks they can get away with sin. Next book.
Next book is Anthem by Ayn Rand. A part about this book I wanted to show them. It has like this little thing. I'm going to turn the pages, same thing, but like a postcard.
Yeah, this is a little postcard. I think at some point they had some type of thing where you can mail something in to get more information about her and her ministry. Ayn Rand, Anthem. So I'm going to say that, first of all, about the book. I like the book. The book talks about a community of people that are just working for each other. But the problem is that everyone gets told what to do. You get told what you're going to study, how much you're going to study. You get told what you're going to work at, what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and basically stay in your lane. And there's a character in here that aspires for more, and he breaks out of that. And Ayn Rand pushes for individualism, personal individualism, and independence. And I think because she came from a socialist country in Russia, that's why she decided to write like that. I have several other books like Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, and many others here. What I will say about Ayn Rand, whenever I see people on YouTube talk about her, they always put a disclaimer. They always preface it with something like, I don't agree with her, I don't like her, or, et cetera, et cetera. What I will say is that she seems to be very clear on her position, and they're not popular. As an example, one of her book title is The Virtue of Selfishness. I have it up there. So she does push against a lot of thoughts of what many people are probably taught that it is good. And I'm not saying that I agree with her, but I'm not going to be. My intention is not to absolutely bash her. I've seen in secondhand books sometimes her books, when I open them, they'll have curse words inside saying this and that about the author. So she is not liked by many people, especially nowadays. I saw a documentary on her. I've seen her on YouTube speak. So I think she's fine. I think she tries to be as consistent as possible. As far as I understand, she was an atheist, but she was. In my understanding, she was trying to be true to herself, and I appreciate that.
Next book, I have an illustrated classic like this, but it's one of my favorites. But I lost the illustrated classic. I'm gonna have to let the dog out a little bit. We have Moby Dick, and this kind is the world's great classics. This is like the type.
Okay, so World Greats Classics, Moby Dick here. This particular edition is about 800 pages. The fonts tend to be a little bit larger. So with Moby Dick, I enjoyed this book. I read this book. It was part of a book club that I had to read it. I would say that if I want to read it over again at some other point, and what I will do is twofold. Number one, read it slower. I enjoy the characters. It was funny. I think I read it too quickly. Number two, I'm going to skip 2 chapters, The Whiteness of the Whale and The Variety of Whales. I don't think anybody has to read that. In my opinion, it did not affect the story at all. And if you read this, I would say do not read the chapters of The Whiteness of the Whale and The Variety of Whales. You will still enjoy the story. I don't think it's needed. But it's a great book. I know a lot of people are intimidated by its size, but it's so fun. It's so good. She read the illustrated classic version. We saw the movie that was filmed in the 1950s. It was funny, obviously a little bit different than the book, but great book. I think everyone should read that as well.
Next book we have is Kindred.
And to lift it up so they can see. Mm-hmm.
And this is made by...
Yeah, the author is Olivia Butler. Kindred, this is more sci-fi book. And it's a little bit this graphic novel, which is over here, it's a good book. I think it's what is it, like 200 and about 230 something pages. It's a good graphic novel, sci-fi. A lady from the 70s travels back to the slave time. She doesn't know how it happens, and then she gets transported back and forth. She keeps on going back, but each time she goes back, she experiences slavery more and more. And initially, you see how she is very against some of the treatment. She's against all the treatment the whole time, but she's more savvy as time progresses. But at the same time, her heart breaks because she sees how slaves were just treated completely different. So I would say if you don't know too much about slavery, I think it would be good if you read this book and see some of the things that they experience. And the sci-fi element also is pretty neat in it. I did enjoy Kendrick. Next.
Next book is Wool, and it's made by Huey.
Yep.
Like,
Okay. Huey, Wool. So if you know anything about the Apple TV Silo series, the first season was basically the first half of this book. I would imagine the second season will be that second half of this book. Because I saw the Silo series, I wanted to read this. Good sci-fi. I liked it. Dystopian. These people are in a silo. They know nothing about the past, which is, supposedly our time. They know nothing about the future. They don't know what year they're on. The only thing that they know is that they live in a silo and the outside is toxic. That's the only thing they know. And there's a few discoveries that are later on found out that things aren't as they are. This is just a lot of fun. Nothing more than that. I do have 2 and 3. I'm getting through those as well. I recommend this as well if you're just looking just to read for fun.
Next book we have Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
Great Expectations by Charles Dickens here. Okay, now with this one, I'm going to say I enjoy this so much. I enjoyed it so much that I went out and I purchased all of, I think it's 14 novels from Charles Dickens. They're over there in that row over there. And all of his novellas, as far as I know as well, including The Christmas Carol, and 2 biographies from him. Now, I know this is probably his most popular book. I'm not sure if it's his best book. I enjoyed it a lot. One advice if you're going to read Dickens. If you're going to read Dickens, do not expect this. Wool. If you read Dickens expecting something about a story and the movement of a story and getting things going and having some action, you're going to be severely disappointed. And I'm going to say, don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Do not read it. You read Dickens with this in mind. You go in there understanding you're going to spend some time with the characters. You're going to have them over for dinner. You're going to have long discussions with them. You're going to observe them. You're going to get annoyed by them. You're going to start liking them. You're going to laugh with them. You're going to cry with them. This is primarily a character-driven novel. Now, some people say, oh, Dickens, he wrote more because he got paid per word because it was part of, I think it was some type of a serial articles that he did for a newspaper, and he got paid per word. That may be the case. It doesn't matter. It does not diminish the story at all. He was so good with his words and so good with the characters. There's a story in here as well. It moves. But again, when you read Dickens, you have to read it with the intention of hanging out with the characters and hanging out with them for a while and feeling it. I tell my wife, I can't wait until I return to this book and return back to these characters. The main character is Pip. There's other characters. My favorite character was Joe, maybe because he was just so funny. But Dickens is extremely funny in his writing. Really enjoy this book. Please give this a chance, but go in it with the understanding that you're going in there to spend some time with the characters. Next book.
Next book we have is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories, and made by Robert Louis Stevenson.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I had not read a fiction book in about 15 years prior to the last year. Not one. And what happened is that I decided to read some fiction. And I said, well, I might as well read, you know, some of these that have been established. I read this and I was absolutely impressed. And I was upset at myself because of what I've probably missed out on. I have read a lot of nonfiction. I've read philosophical, I have read theological, historical, biographical books. They're all great. And I think I was missing out on some of this. Here's my little argument for fiction. When you read something in a nonfiction book, for example, if it says, do not stay in the house if there's a fire. If there's a fire, you must get out of the house. Okay, so there's a, a statement that tells you what you should do. You read it, you say, okay, this is what I should do. When you read it in a story, the story just connects more if it's a good writer. So, for example, it would write about what happened when the house started burning. How did the person start noticing it was burning? What went through the person's mind when it started burning? Was there anybody else left in the house? How long did it take for the person to escape? What did he end up losing in the fire? How did that ended up affecting him weeks or months later? What relationships were affected by that? All of that affects you and it just leaves a stronger impression. Now, this is something, a very simple illustration, but what I'm trying to prove is that what fiction does is it just leaves a deeper imprint in your mind and heart when it comes to its truths. Sometimes when you read a nonfiction book, you'll see a proposition. This is what it is. You understand it and you move forward. It's intellectual. When it's fiction, though, it just connects. It lingers. It haunts you longer. And one of the things that I appreciate about this book is that I read it and I said, "Oh my, there is someone there that's trying to get away from sin. Excuse me, not away from sin. It's trying to get away with sin. That they don't want people to know what they're doing, and ultimately his sin does find him out. And the whole story is just very sad and very dark. Great book. I enjoyed it. Recommend it. Next book.
Next book we have is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
Shelley. Yep. Frankenstein, just like this book, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and just like the Picture of Dorian Gray, they're all considered Gothic books. Thank you, Jose. So this Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, great Gothic. This is considered probably between this and Dracula the best Gothic books of all time. Even in the non Gothic arena, it's considered in most top 10, maybe even top 20 books of all time. Mary Shelley, I think, was a teenager when she wrote this, and it was part of a challenge she had in what was I think it was cold or wet winter that she experienced in Switzerland with her friends and her, I think at the time, was fiance. And she ended up writing Frankenstein, and it was just a game changer. This is a story about man in science and man and his limitations, and not only what they can do, but what they should do. And it makes you think a little bit about AI, in the sense that what are we as humanity creating? It could just be an algorithm that never evolves to anything else, or can it be something more? I don't know. But within this book, Frankenstein is nothing like the movie. Do not expect some mindless monsters with bolts taken from his necks, just grunting around. No, this is someone who is intelligent and who wants something. And him and the creator, which is Dr. Frankenstein, they're just at odds, and they both harm each other. But I can definitely see both sides of why, after Dr. Frankenstein creates him, why does he want to destroy him? Because he fears for humanity and what it might do. And also Frankenstein, why he's looking to destroy the monster, the creature. Why is he looking to destroy Dr. Frankenstein and his family? Great book. And also Mary Shelley's life, very interesting. I heard about it while I was reading this book. I ended up getting her biography as well. Very, very interesting life as well. Next book.
Next book is For Freedom Christ Has Set Us Free. Galactics.
Yeah, Galatians.
Galatians.
So this is a book by R.C. Sproul, and ultimately, this is a great book. If you have not read this book of R.C. Sproul's commentary on Galatians, I'm going to encourage you to read it. I'm going to say that most people, I believe, erroneously have a misunderstanding of how Galatians work. When I say most, I mean most evangelicals. And they many times don't even know that they're taking the antinomian view, even if it's theological antinomian view. And here, R.C. Sproul, he addresses how historically the book of Galatians has been understood, and I think his understanding is correct, especially when it comes to the law and the New Testament believers. Great book. I encourage you guys to read it as well. Next.
The next book is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck.
Okay, this is a book of John Steinbeck. If I had it, I'll say this. I read this in what was going through my mind when I read this, because this is my first John Steinbeck book. I had never read him before, and I said to myself, wow, this seems very raw, very raw. This book was written, I think it was in the late 20s, early 1930s, somewhere around there. And what ended up happening is 1937, it says here. Okay, I think 2 years later, it was made into a movie. When I saw the movie, I was expecting it to be like the book. It was not like the book. The movie softened so many things. This book is raw. This book is raw. You might get offended by this book. Do not read this book if you feel like you're going to get offended with certain terminology. But if you read this book, I think it will affect you. I read this book and I was just really affected by it. It's a story about two men and how they deal with life, and sometimes they're just misunderstood and the consequences of their actions, even if they were not intentional. Great book. Well, that's it for the physical books that I own that I read in 2024, the ones that I just was able to review here. Josiah, thank you very much. You all have a good day. Bye.
Let's roll out.